I'm Will Beecham, ICIS Chemical Business Deputy Editor, and I'm here with Paul Hodges, Chairman of International Echem. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Will.
Paul has written us an outlook for 2019 for the global chemical industry. And in the intro, you talk, Paul, about the fears rising of a global recession or downturn coming, something that you've been talking about for quite a while, actually, in your blog and other articles. Do you now see more signs of this synchronized downturn approaching, and what's driving this?
Yes, unfortunately, we do, Will. I mean, a year ago in the Outlook piece, I was very sceptical about the idea that we were now finally seeing a, quote, synchronized global recovery, which everybody was talking about at the time, and the central banks were saying, oh, yes, we've done it. It's taken a long time, but now everything's going on. We said, we don't see any evidence of that on the ground. Unfortunately, I think we've been right. And so over the year, people have got more skeptical about this recovery. And now clearly financial markets have also got the idea that we are heading into a downturn. We don't know yet how severe that downturn will be, but I think it's becoming pretty clear that in key areas like autos, like housing, like electronics, key areas for the chemical sector demand, that well, things are not going well, and we're already seeing warning signs in the shape of profit warnings from companies that this isn't just talk, this is actually loss of demand.
And can you pick out any factors which are creating that loss of demand? Does it all go back to demographics?
Partly it goes back to demographics, that the underlying cause is demographics, that we have this, which is wonderful news, of course, we have this now totally new generation of people over the age of 55 who, in the past you got up to pension age. If you were lucky, you had a year or two after that, and then you died. So you didn't affect the economy. But now we have another 15 or 20 years in the West for people living, but they don't buy very much and they don't earn very much because we haven't changed our social and employment structures. When we brought in the pension in Germany and the UK 100 years ago, pension age was 70. We now have a lower pension age, yet we have life expectancy which is 20 years higher. So we've got a generation of people who are not contributing at the moment to the economy because we haven't changed our employment and social policies. So that's a dead weight on the economy. Plus, of course, since the 1970s, we haven't in the West replaced the population because we haven't, because of increased life expectancy, you haven't had to have a child every year in order to make sure that somebody was alive to look after you in your old age. So we haven't got a lot of young people who are the big demand consumers, and we've got a lot of older people who basically own most of what they need already and are just a replacement market. So the idea, this is what we said lots of times in the book that we published with ICIS, the idea that stimulus could possibly essentially print babies was always a nonsense. And now what we're seeing is actually, I'm sorry, we were right.
And the end of stimulus, would you say that's sort of the near-term trigger for this downturn?
Yes. I mean, we've always seen stimulus, and we use the analogy of a balloon. And you have to keep pumping air into the balloon, otherwise it starts to deflate. And the central banks, in China in particular, have pumped more and more cash into stimulus, and it's trillions of dollars. It's really an unbelievable amount of debt that has been put in. And one thing we know about debt is that debt brings forward consumption. I want to buy something today, but I can't afford it. If you kindly lend me the money, I'll go and buy it today. But it doesn't mean I want the same thing tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to have to pay you back. So all the debt that's been created hasn't created new demand. It's just brought forward demand. So that's what we're going into now, that we're going to have a shortfall of demand. I would imagine that, well, we can't tell with central banks. They might decide to do another stimulus program. You never know. But at some point, and this could be the point, the stimulus stops, and now we have to just start doing the payback for the policy mistakes of the last 10, 15 years.
You mentioned China there. The global economy since the financial crisis has relied on China to keep growth going economically. Can we carry on relying on China, would you say?
Well, if you look at the data, the average income in the cities in China, which is about half the population, is around $6,000. In the rural areas, the other half of the population, it's less than half that. Now these would be poverty levels, below poverty levels in the West. So all this demand that's been there, the car market, the smartphone market, all of these things, that's not been earned income. It's been stimulus. It's been borrowing. So once you say, actually, we can't afford to borrow anymore, suddenly that bubble bursts. And that's what we're seeing. Particularly, we've seen it in the shadow banking area, which was up at 160 billion a month at one point. $160 billion of lending a month. And it's now back down at 20 billion. Well, you've obviously taken a whole head of steam out of the economy, because now people can't borrow to buy the things that otherwise they couldn't afford.
So, assuming this downturn does come along, what impact would you say it could have on the chemical sector? We've got this huge build-up of US polyethylene capacity coming on stream. We've got the circular economy, which is going to affect demand. So, how do you see it playing out for the industry?
To be honest, Will, I'm actually quite positive about it in a funny sort of way, because what it means is we're going to have to go back to running businesses as businesses, rather than in a gale turkeys fly, and or in a hurricane. So we're going to go back to, what are the fundamentals of this business? Am I managing it properly? Have I got a sensible level of debt? Are my customers doing well? Because that's critical. If my customers aren't doing well, I can't do well long term. Are my suppliers doing well? And I think that we're going to move into a world of winners and losers. So the winners are going to be the people who manage their businesses well and look out for new opportunities, because there are an awful lot of new opportunities. If you take a whole generation of people over the age of 55, nobody's supplying anything for them. Now, it's a more service-led business. So you actually need more techno-commercial people. You need, instead of cutting back on people all the time, you're actually going to need to employ more people. So that's actually a good thing. We're going to be recruiting, qualified people and giving them worthwhile, important jobs to add services together with the product. And so the winners are going to be doing things like that. The losers will do what losers always do, which is stick their heads in the sand and say, oh, no, nothing will change. It will all be right in 3 months. I believe in Jay Powell in the Fed. I believe in Mario Draghi and so on. Don't worry, the central banks will bail me out. And as I say, they might be right for the next 3 or 6 months or whatever. Who knows what the central banks will do. But in the medium to long term, the winners will be those people who start to run their businesses properly and really focus on the challenges ahead and those opportunities.
Well, thanks, Paul. And just one final thing. There's been a lot of volatility in oil prices, which obviously has a lot of impact on chemicals.
Yes.
What's your outlook for oil prices for this year?
One is, again, we were saying this last year, we had a record sort of period of very calm markets in financial markets, in commodity markets and so on. And we were saying, actually, this is all very artificial. We will get back to volatility. And of course, if you've had a long period of calm, you tend to get quite intense volatility. And so this is what we're seeing today. The prices rush up, they rush down again. We were up at $75. Now we're about 50. Now we've gone back up to 60 again, and so on. So it's a very, very challenging market. And the underlying factors for the oil market are that quite a lot of pricing is dictated by the hedge funds, who are financial players who are playing games of, I'm going to go long oil prices and short the dollar, or the other way around, or other games. Nothing to do with supply and demand. You've also got OPEC and Russia trying to massage and manipulate the price higher by cutting back on supply, which has typically never worked in the past and is unlikely to work today. And you've got a slowdown in demand. So the underlying fundamentals for oil are not very good. But because you have this artificial period of calm, I think we are going to have to put up with quite a lot of volatility until we settle down to a new sort of more stable level.
Can you take a punt on what a stable level would be?
Yeah, I actually, nobody's going to believe me, but yeah, the stable level is going to be back at where the stable level used to be before all this fun and games used to start, at around $30 a barrel. There's no reason why oil prices, which have been, the median level of oil prices since 1867 or something like that, is $27. So if you can go for that period of time at that kind of level, why wouldn't you continue to do it? Everything else is artificial. It's either artificial because you've got artificial demand created by the central banks, subprime and stimulus spending. It's artificial because you've got OPEC trying to ramp up. But if you have high prices, what do? You encourage more people to enter. You encourage more use of electric vehicles, for example. So you have a short-term win and then you lose out. Very happy to put that sort of around $30 a barrel as where we will end up. When we end up, slightly different question. A lot of volatility ahead before we get there, I think.
Okay. Thanks very much, Paul. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Will.